We're beginning our grammar unit by talking about pronoun usage. And as we learn about pronoun usage, we're going to be talking about rules related to it, but I'm also going to be teaching you some tricks that hopefully will help you better understand these rules and see how you would utilize these rules in your writing. These tricks are things that were taught to me when I was struggling with certain rules of grammar, and so hopefully these will help solidify some of these concepts for you. So we're going to start by talking about what is a pronoun. So a pronoun is a word that takes the place of a noun or another pronoun. And the reason we have pronouns is because it keeps us from having to write the same word repeatedly, which helps our writing sound smoother and flow better. So an example of why we need pronouns is seen in this first example sentence. Bob went to the movies to see a film Bob had been anticipating. However, when Bob arrived, Bob realized that Bob's wallet, where Bob kept all of Bob's money, was empty. So you'll see that it's awkward to say Bob over and over and over again, and I almost replaced one of those Bobs with a pronoun because that's what we naturally do in our language, because it helps our understanding, and it just helps what we're saying to flow more smoothly and make more sense to our listener or our reader. So we would correct that and write Bob went to the cinema to see a film he had been anticipating. However, when he arrived, he realized that his wallet, where he kept all of his money, was empty. And so those pronouns very easily take the place of Bob. And like I said, it just sounds more natural because this is how we speak. This is how we write. So you might not have known that you're already using pronouns regularly, but this adds for flow and smoother understanding of the sentence. Now that we know what a pronoun is, we can talk about an antecedent and what that is. So the pronoun or noun that a pronoun replaces is called the antecedent. And you might read that definition and still not know what that is. That's okay. When we look at this example, it'll start to make more sense for you. So the prefix ante means before because the antecedent comes before the pronoun that it replaces. And like I said, this example is going to help you better understand that. So Bob right here is our antecedent. It is our noun that our pronoun will be replacing. Bob went to see a film he had been anticipating. So right here we see that the pronoun he replaces the word Bob, the noun Bob. So instead of saying Bob went to see a film Bob had been anticipating, we just say Bob went to see a film he had been anticipating. So again, Bob is the antecedent and the pronoun is he. Once you start to become familiarized with those terms, then you can start looking at the rules with pronouns and the things we have to follow. So the first thing we're going to talk about is pronoun agreement. And that means that the antecedent and the pronoun agree in number and gender. And so the antecedent, if it's a singular masculine pronoun, or noun, then the pronoun that replaces it must also be singular and masculine. And right here you'll see that we have a chart of singular pronouns and plural pronouns. You will see that there's some overlap with you, and yours as it is here. And that's because though you might say y'all where you're from, y'all is not a plural pronoun. You still is the plural pronoun. Yours is still the plural, okay? So that's important to remember. Now, there has been a recent exception to the rule, and that's because MLA has updated their rules and standards now that we use they, them, and their as a singular pronoun in society. And so MLA has updated the rules to match what goes on in how we speak and how people identify. And so at times, they, them, and their can be used as a singular pronoun, and we're going to see that in the example on the next slide. So here are some examples that will hopefully help you understand those rules about pronoun agreement that we talked about on the slide before. So Michael Jordan dreamed that Michael would become a famous basketball player from a young age. So we know that Michael Jordan is a singular noun. It's only talking about one person. And we know that Michael Jordan is a male who identifies with the pronouns he, him, his. And so we will be replacing the second Michael with the appropriate gendered pronoun that is singular. So then the sentence becomes, Michael Jordan dreamed that he would become a famous basketball player from a young age. Now let's look at the second example. Taylor believed that Taylor could make an A on Taylor's upcoming test. And so because this is a gender neutral name, it could be a male name or a female name, or maybe we don't want to assume the gender of Taylor, we can use a traditionally plural pronoun. If we look back at this chart right here, they, them, or their, we can now use it as a singular pronoun because we now recognize the gender neutral as being singular as well. And so we can say, Taylor believed that they could make an A on their upcoming test. So that is now allowed. If we do not want to pair a gendered pronoun, we can use the traditionally plural as a singular. Now, more on the note of singular pronouns, we're going to be talking about singular indefinite pronouns. And so these are pronouns that are a little weird. They have extra rules that are associated with them. And so it's going to be really important that you memorize these pronouns in this box and know that they are indefinite pronouns and that they are singular. So we're going to look at this example sentence to start to better understand what these are. Everybody forgot to complete blank essay. If we look at this word everybody, in our minds we might think that is plural because it's talking about multiple people that create that everybody, but instead of looking them as individuals, we're now grouping them into one unit, which would then become a singular unit. We have to think about it that way. So this everybody right here is considered singular, and so we then would need a singular pronoun to go right here. And so traditionally speaking, with the English language, we would write everybody forgot to complete his or her essay. But here's the thing, we don't speak like that, okay? That is not how we would naturally say that sentence. Naturally, somebody would say everybody forgot to complete their essay. And technically in the past, that is incorrect. But because of that new rule where we now accept their, they, and them as being singular pronouns, we can now use their, and this becomes correct. And for this course, you're going to go with the way that you naturally speak, and anytime you have one of those singular indefinite pronouns, you're going to put either their, they, or them in as the pronoun replacement. And so that actually makes things easier for you because now you're doing it the way you naturally speak. So anytime you see one of these singular indefinite pronouns, make sure you memorize them. You will know that you need to use their, that you will need to use their, they, or them. All right, so now we're going to get into our second rule, which is pronoun reference. And so what that is it's when we have a passage of writing, we need all of the pronouns to be easily matched with their antecedent. And we can have pronoun reference errors when one of two things is happening. So the first example would be if there are too many possible antecedents for one pronoun. And we see that right here. Jim and Bill went water skiing and he forgot his arm floaties. So we don't know if he is referring to Jim or if he is referring to Bill. There's too many possible antecedents for that pronoun to go to. So we would have to change he to Bill to indicate that Bill is the one who is forgetting his arm floaties to have better understanding. Okay, so that would be one example of a pronoun reference error. The second one would be when there is no antecedent available to go with a pronoun, and we see this here in this set of sentences. I received a speeding ticket yesterday. They should raise the speed limit in this town. Okay, we don't know who they is. That's where the confusion lies. There's no antecedent that tells us who they is. So we don't know, is they the police? We don't know if they is the government. Okay? We have to know that. So we can't just put the pronoun they in there because we don't know who they is. So that would be a second error, is when we don't know the antecedent. So be sure in your own writing that you are clearly identifying to whom the pronoun matches up with to avoid pronoun reference errors. Okay. The last rule comes with case. And so just as all pronouns have number, they also have case. Pronouns can either be subjective, which means they are the subject of a verb. Okay, so they're the ones doing the action, or they can be objective, meaning they act as a direct object, indirect object, or object of a preposition. Okay, and so that would be they're the ones receiving the action. Here we have the list of subjective pronouns and objective pronouns. We'll look at this first example. He went to the concert. So he is a subjective pronoun. It is a subject because he is the one doing the action, which is going to the concert. Went would be the past tense. Here we have an objective pronoun. The box office is the subject of this sentence. They're the one doing the action. Sold him, okay, him is the one receiving the action, 2 tickets, okay? So we must know pronoun case. And the main time when we have pronoun case issues, we're pretty good at he, him, she, her, all of these. The main time we struggle with this is when we have who and whom. And we're going to talk about those and some tricks in order to understand that better. Okay, so whom is complicated because we don't naturally use the word whom when we're speaking. We generally just use who instead, but now we're going to learn how to use who and when to use whom as well. So we only use who if it is the subject of a verb, okay? And it usually comes just before a verb. So who should be used as the subject of the sentence? He was the one who wore a pink tutu to his interview. Okay, who is doing the action of wearing the pink tutu? So who is the subject of the verb wore? And here we have another example. Who ate the last can of Spam? Who is the subject of the verb ate? Okay, with these examples, you still might be confused. If you'll just hang tight with me, we're about to get to a trick that's going to really help you out. But first, let's talk about whom and look at some example sentences with whom. Okay, so you only use whom as the object of some kind. So it usually will come after a preposition or a verb. Whom did you support in school as the most likely to run for president? So whom is the direct object of the verb support. You is the subject, so whom can't be. Now, I fully understand with that example, you still might be confused. Bear with me. We're going to look at one example, and then I'll get to the trick. With whom did you go get your new tattoo? Whom is the object of the preposition with. You is the subject of the sentence. Okay? Again, you are probably confused at this point. This next slide is going to really help you out. Here's the trick to knowing when to use who versus when to use whom. So you have to reword the sentence, okay? And we're going to keep in mind that who equals he and whom equals him. So if someone asked you the question, who asked you to go to prom? Would you say him asked me to go to prom or he asked me to go to prom? Okay? Because you would respond with he, we know that who, remember who equals he, is the right one to use here. Now let's look at the next one. This is also the trick. With whom are you going to prom? Would you say I am going to prom with he or I am going to prom with him? Okay, if you respond with him, replace it with him, then we know whom equals him. And so that's the trick that I found super helpful for understanding when to use who versus whom. And hopefully this will help you out in your pronoun endeavors.